Bring me back. They want to see someone building something or doing something. It's like, take me on the journey with you. Typically, the biggest challenge for content creators is themselves. It doesn't matter how good you are. It matters who's showing up for the audience. If people discover you and they can't figure out how to describe you, they're going to forget you. Like, you need to be distinctive. People are starting to build reality shows around their businesses. People are starting to take you into their workplace. Employees of workplaces are now making content of what it's like to work in a company. If you inject a bit of sensationalism around the emotion behind what it is you're talking about, it makes it all that more attractive to share with others. The framework I use for this is there's kind of 7 key emotions that tend to get the most viral traction when you share content. And those 7 things are:
in today's episode of the Think Media Podcast, we're going to be learning some game-changing lessons from million-dollar personal brands and why most creators and entrepreneurs are fighting the wrong battles heading into 2025 and the hidden opportunities that 99% of personal brands are missing in the current landscape. We're also going to be learning the counterintuitive truth of why personal brands build trust 3 times faster than corporate brands, backed by real examples from our guests' work with Culture Kings and other iconic brands. Plus, he's going to be sharing his battle-tested 90-day framework for building your brand or your personal brand from scratch. And there's going to be so much more. Now, our guest today is Dane Walker. He's the CEO of the rapidly expanding digital media agency Rival. And he also is the author of 90-Day Brand Plan. And he's a global authority. He has built multiple different brands, consults with all kinds of different brands and personal brands, is really the go-to voice for entrepreneurs. And in our case, content creators. So this is your opportunity to get your brand right for your YouTube channel, for your social media presence, to get your personal brand dialed in for a new year. And there's going to be a lot of juicy nuggets in this masterclass. So I'm excited for what's coming up. Dane, welcome to the show.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me, dude, and excited to be here.
Yeah, as we dive in, I want to start off right with the 3 biggest enemies creators need to overcome for building a standout brand. Or really, what are the 3 changes? You know, we were just talking, the game is changing when it comes to branding and personal branding in a 2025 landscape. And we wrote a few things down. The first thing you said is, people are tired of talking head content. Expand on that. What's the bigger theme there?
Yeah, I think, for me, when it comes to talking head content, there's content creation comes in waves with personal brands, right? If you go back 5 years ago on Instagram in particular, carousels were the hot thing that was popping off. Now YouTube channels are finding that they're going to make shorts, they're going to make epic, introductory kind of promo videos at the start of their podcast. Everyone's just getting better and more fierce at what they're doing. And I think, just sitting down, turning the camera on and hitting record and talking is now getting kind of moved into a category where it's not taken seriously anymore. I think what people are looking for on channels in particular around entrepreneurship is they want to see someone building something or doing something. It's like, take me on the journey with you. The founder-led content is kind of a thing. It's like, okay, you're talking about what you can do, but show me, right? So people are starting to build reality shows around their businesses. People are starting to take you into their workplace. Employees of workplaces are now making content of what it's like to work in a company. So I just think that it's getting more competitive. More people are trying to enter the market. And you can't just, get in front of a camera and pretend you have a business anymore. People want to see proof and evidence that you're actually doing something substantial behind the scenes.
That kind of ties into number 2, where we do talk about market saturation. You're talking about you got to be good. What do you think has been kind of the different eras in a 2025 landscape? Is it too late to start? Or what's the different approach that you got to have?
I never think it's too late to start. I think, there's people that are, haven't even started a channel yet that are going to dunk on you and I with views and attention and conversion, the likes that we've never seen, right? So there's a Mr. Beast out there that doesn't even have a channel yet. And I think what's interesting here is it's never too late to start. I think it's just how you start and where you start is always changing. One thing's certain in life, and that change is inevitable. Platforms are going to change, algorithms are going to change. And I hear this all the time. I talk to personal brands and content creators like, what I do kind of works, but it used to work a lot better. I'm like, change. They're like, but I liked it how it was. Get over it. I liked making carousels. Doesn't work anymore. Maneuver, change, evolve, do something else. I love Instagram. Doesn't get the same reward that YouTube gives me now. Like, I'm moving on. So like, I'm still going to do Instagram, but I'm focusing on a different tactic. Like, we have to be agile and we have to maneuver. And I think the enemy is that, like, if you want to create, I guess, a battlefield scenario, the enemy is like the tide of chaining, like the weather's changing. And I liken this in my book, like, you know, if you look at social media or content creation, it's seasonal. You know, there's going to be winters, there's going to be summers, there's going to be autumns, there's going to be springs. And you can't get down in the dumps when there's a drought and you're like, I'm not getting the views I used to get, I'm not getting the comments or the engagement I used to get, so therefore I'm going to slow down. Well, if you slow down, those that speed up in those hard times produce more content, give more value, try to be more dynamic. When the season comes good again, the algorithm comes good again, the new wave, or whatever that is, comes good again, those that are preparing in the winter are the ones that are going to do well in the springtime. So for me, I just think that when it comes to content creation, the enemy is like sometimes like people and themselves. But if you look externally, it's usually that there's saturation. Like, people are getting really good at creating content now, giving away value for free. Like, if you go onto Google, you can solve every problem you want to solve right now on YouTube and Google. What gives you the right to charge money to solve that problem? You don't have a license to have their money. What gives you a license is like, are you worthy of their attention? And I hear this all the time. People come up to me and I do workshops with clients. They're like, our content's good. I'm like, great, put it on social media. I don't want to sell it. Well, if it's really good, put it out there for free. Let's see if it's actually good or not. They're like, well, I don't want to give away my magic. I don't want to give away my best stuff. And it's like, well, if you give it away and they don't react to it, you need to create new stuff anyway. So I think that the social contract between creators and social media right now is they expect it to be really good for free. And there's a lot of people entering the market at the same time, trying to steal your lunch and eat it in front of you. So we have to get a lot better at creating content, because every time you create a piece of content, there's no more people on the social platform per se. There's no more people spending money in a particular market. Like, if you want to gain grounds as a creator, you have to take attention of other people. And that's why it's getting difficult. It's because there's a lot of people out here that are really good at getting attention, and you're showing up and trying to take it off them. So that's why you have to be better than ever.
Man, we're coming out swinging on the podcast with two themes already. I feel like we went 0 to 100 real quick. Theme of the podcast is Drake, do right and kill everything. And so number 3, though. So people are tired of talking head content, kind of like reinventing yourself, maybe doing show me what you're doing, like show me the behind the scenes, even reality shows or innovative new ways of doing content. Market saturation, you got to be good. And there's also seasons. So also, if you're getting prepared in the winter, then if you can outlast the competition, then you also can ride those various waves. And we're going to be unpacking that throughout this entire episode with a lot of tactics to help listeners, whether you're just starting or whether you're more advanced. And so those will be coming up. But we're talking about these 3 kind of big changes in branding and personal branding in 2025. And the third one is build a theme around yourself. Talk a little bit about that, and maybe also what you're building around yourself in general, maybe like structure and teams in regards to building a personal brand.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, so like feel free to nudge me around if need be. I think themes are like when you're putting yourself in the market, people try to put you in a bucket. They try to label you, right? Like you might say, well, Seth Godin's the marketing guy, and Greg Cardone's the sales guy, and Tony Robbins is the guru. And like we tend to put like these labels on these characters, even though they're more complex and nuanced than these things. It's like, Wim Hof is the breathing guy, right? David Goggins is the crazy guy with no shirt that's always yelling and running somewhere. Like we tend to simplify things. And if someone was to radically simplify you, what would they use to describe you? And if that's not what you want it to be, then how do you course correct that reaction to be what you want it to be? So for example, for a long time, I would go on podcasts and people would say, here's Dane, the Instagram guy. And I was like, God damn it. Like, I don't want to be the Instagram guy. You know what I mean? I was like, I want to be the brand guy. And I was like, well, what's giving my community and my interactions and my engagements the impression that I'm the Instagram guy? And I was like, oh, it says it in my bio. oh, every title of every piece of content I make talks about Instagram this, Instagram that. I'm like, well, I'm throwing the language and the themes out there and they're picking up on it. So like you need to control the narrative. Like what are the themes that you're trying to own? Are you trying to own videographer? Are you trying to own story? Are you trying to own, creative? Are you trying to own branding, strategy? Like what's the thing you want to own? And you have to be conscious that you need to start putting monikers out there or putting labels out there in the zeitgeist for people to pick up on and go, okay, they're that thing. And the easiest way to test this is just, ask your community, like, hey, if you to describe me in a sentence, how would you describe me? And just see what they say back. And go, okay, cool. I'm not mad at them for describing me the wrong way. It's my responsibility to adjust what they think my brand is. And I think coming back to the challenges, it's like, well, all these people are flooding the market and entering the market. Like, what should I do about it? Is it too late? Poor little me. The algorithm sucks. Like, am I blacklisted or shadow banned? When you dial it all the way back to its simplest form, typically the biggest challenge for content creators is themselves. Like, either a lack of self-esteem or a lack of personal belief that their stuff is any good, or I'm going to be judged, or I'm not ready yet because I need to buy all this equipment and have this background and yada, yada. I think just to keep it simple here, man, like if people could just realize that there's someone on the internet right now who has no idea about your industry and is like watching YouTube content that's going to start making content about your industry and get more viewers than you, even though you've been doing this thing that you've been doing for 4, 5, 10 years. It's like he who shows up and produces media gets the attention. It doesn't matter how good you are. And this is where the fallacy between people go, well, I'm better than that person. Why do they have attention and I don't? And it comes down to the equation of like, it doesn't matter how good you are. It matters who's showing up for the audience, who's showing up for the community consistently, giving them nourishment, going, hey, I'm here. Here's entertainment. Here's content. They're showing up with a great personality, great charm, great style, and they're able to romanticize their audience. Like, look at content like flirting. Content is you flirting with an audience. We might not know if we're going to do business in the future, right? We can't go straight to going to bed together. So if you look at the greats like Alex Hormozy, Gary Vee, David Goggins, Lewis Howes, Dan Martell, like whoever you're engaging with on social media, we're flirting with them. Like, man, this guy's kind of interesting. I wonder what their story is. I wonder what they do. I wonder what their business looks like. You want to create a sense of like charisma and exchange, which we're starting a social contract together. You can't just go straight to the purchase. And I think too many people like produce social media content are only focused on, I need the leads, I need the sale outcome, rather than I got to learn how to have some riz. I got to learn how to create a bit of romance between me and the audience for them to want to hang out with me. And if they just want to hang out with me, I'll sell them stuff later.
Man, there's a lot in there. And one of my favorite things you said was also your biggest competition is yourself, because we could get so stuck in our heads and somebody else that's less talented, less prepared, maybe has less business acumen, less depth, but just more cavalier courage to just step out there and start recording might be getting the viewership. And I think sometimes we're guilty of watching somebody on the sidelines, we're sitting on the sidelines and being like, oh man, that's not even right, or picking them apart. Meanwhile, we're not taking action. And there's something about taking action, putting your content out there so you can at least be discovered. And man, we need a little riz and romance in our brands. Like we need a little bit, content's like flirting. So we really just hit these 3 kind of big themes that we can all apply going into 2025 and beyond. But I want to go a little bit deeper on that, because part of your content strategy is having 5 core themes. Is that true? Can you break this down, and then how we can maybe start identifying what that means? And what would you say if Grant Cardone is the sales guy? If, I wrote the book YouTube Secrets, if I think I'm the YouTube guy, well, that's only one theme. Who do you see that's building out, these different themes? And this kind of gets in that niche conversation where, do you get too pigeonholed if all you're talking, and now your brand, but what else are you? And how are people experiencing that? And how can people follow along to develop a stronger brand as they're developing their 5 core themes?
That's a great question. I think like the core themes, and we talk about this in the book, essentially it's like you want to rotate around 5 different objective talking points, right? So like, for example, when I first started producing content on Instagram, my original themes were, hey, this is how to make content. This is how to design content. This is how to formulate content. This is how to brand your content. Like everything was about content, and it just pigeonholed me to be the content guy. So when people would DM me or reach out to go, hey, can you help me? It was always like, can you make my content for me? But my objective was I wanted to build their brand. I didn't want to make their content for them. So like what you create creates a reaction. So it's kind of like, okay, I plant this seed, the fruit I'm bearing isn't the fruit I want. I want a different fruit tree. So then I have to go plant something different. So the themes are kind of like you planting different, I guess, fruit trees in your vineyard to get a certain result that you want. The themes should certainly sit around the product suite that you offer. So when I started talking about brand strategy, brand identity, graphic design, logos, brand messaging, marketing and advertising, people started to DM me or go to my website and reach out and say, hey, can you help me with my branding? And it took a little while to get the stigma of being the content guy off and be focused on the... So you have to have themes that sit in the vernacular of what it is that you're trying to sell as a product or a service. But you want to give yourself enough variety that you don't run out of things to kind of divulge. And if something's not working, just swap it out. You know what I mean? I think people struggle to get clear on what it is that they do. So having 5 themes forces you to get clear, because you could be clever, you could be charismatic, you can be cool, but if people land on your social channels and can't figure out what you do or why they should engage with you, it's very difficult for them to hit the follow button. So if you want them to hit the follow button and drop a comment and engage and pay attention, they need to understand, well, what the hell are you? Who are you? Why do you exist? Why should I care? What's in it for me? Stop talking about how great you are and start sharing with me what I get out of this relationship. We're in a social contract. We're romanticizing each other. You're romanticizing me. We're sharing our riz with each other. What do I get out of this contract? Because a lot of times when we talk to people about starting their social content, they're so focused on me, but they're not thinking about you, the audience, being of service. So the 5 key themes, it just gives you, I guess, a neighborhood to play in. So like, just give yourself 5 topics. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. And then what you'll notice is if hypothetically you post 30 pieces of content this month and you have 5 themes and you rotate what you talk about each day of the week, right? So then it's like, today I talk about logos, tomorrow I talk about color psychology, the next day I talk about messaging, then I talk about strategy, then I talk about advertising, then I go back to the start, do it all over again. That means you post 6 pieces of content per month, 1 on each theme. 6 pieces of content each month on each 5 of your 5 themes. And then you go back at the end of the month, you go, which themes resonated the most? And just look at the data. Like, every time I talk about color psychology, people go nuts and I get a ton of leads from it. Let me just talk about that a little bit more. Or let me try and find a theme that like supports that theme a little better. So I just start looking at the themes I talk about like I'm a day trader, like I'm an investor. Like I'm investing in a theme today. Let me see what the ROI of that theme investment was today and at the end of the month. And then at the end of the month, what I used to do is just go, well, this theme doesn't do anything. I get no leads from it. No one comments. No one cares. I get no reshares, no engagement on that theme. Let's just kick that theme and put something else in that place. So I just would go back and forth with this with my clients until we can get a stack of themes that actually work for their social media channel.
What's your philosophy on niching down? If you look at like a Gary Vee case study, wine library and wine was a couple years, and then business content and social media. And then somebody today with a brand as big as his might be like, well, he's like, you are the niche. That's a quote that gets thrown around. And so it's like, it might be the Jets, it might still be wine, it might be NFTs and social and, anything in social marketing, commerce, online shopping, all this stuff. But he's Gary Vee, and Cardone, right, was niche sales and then real estate and then business, and they do like marriage conferences. So what's also maybe part of the journey, and I noticed your themes kind of orbit around a tip of the spear to cut through the noise. But I'm curious, for some, there's a big debate. Some people are like, you don't need to niche down. You're just the niche, talk about kind of whatever you want. And, in a YouTube context, not a lot of people break out doing that, but there's, 1 or 2 odd stories. And so some people think that's a way to go. If someone's trying to unpack, they're multi-passionate, are they trying to niche down and then pick 5 core themes? Or if they start day 1 and they're like, this is going to be my wine, sales, NFT, crypto, pickleball channel, that's the kind of 5 themes. Unpack that a little more.
Yeah, that's a great man, I got like 4 ways I could unpack this. So yeah, like the whole thing around niching or niching, like niches get the riches kind of topic, right? Like I agree with Gary Vee. Like you are your niche in some aspects, and I kind of challenge it on other aspects. So I think that's a radical oversimplification of a marketing strategy and a brand deployment potentially, because I think the two things I go to, and let's just look at this maybe a little differently. So whether like shall thou niche or not, let's just put that on the shelf for now and just go, let's look at this a little bit differently. What I like to look at is like, so let's sit down. What does greatness look like for you in 5 years? Like, what are you building? Well, I want to build a company, or I want to do this, or I want to do, like, get clear on like, what is the Mount Everest that you're trying to climb? And this is a difficult question to answer, because a lot of times when I sit down with people, especially when they're starting, they're like, I want to do this and that and this and that, and it's like, cool. But just like, if you had to be the best and you were really good at like one core business model, what would that predominant primary moneymaker be for you? For me, it's an agency, right? I have a book, I have courses, I do seminars, I do this and that and all the rest of it, but I make my dough running a company. So that's like my Mount Everest, right? I like doing this other stuff, but these are all different camps up the mountain, right? But my Mount Everest that pays for all this other stuff is, running a company. So back to like, well, what is your Mount Everest? Like you need to figure out like, where do you want to be in 5 years? What does greatness look like? And look at the future. You need to like really cast yourself out there at least 5 years. Then come back into the present and be like, well, where am I now? Right? So at the beginning, I was like, I work at Telstra. I have a $200,000 debt. I'm depressed. I hate my job. I hate my boss. I hate what I do every day. My Mount Everest was like, hey, I wonder if I could build an agency, make $1 million a year and have 5 employees. That was my Mount Everest at the very beginning 6 years ago. And what you need to ask yourself is like, okay, if that's my Mount Everest and this is where I am now, there's one frame of thinking that you need to have, and it's split thinking, right? So I need to work from the current toward the future, and I need to work from the future back to now. I need to work from both ends, and I need to figure out like how this pathway leads up the mountain. And you can't just think current forward and future back. You need these two to kind of work synergistically together. Within that, what is that pathway? For me, it was like, I got to make content. I got to generate leads for this agency. But then I realized like no one cares about me and my Mount Everest. They care about themselves and their Mount Everest. So I was like, well, people are out here trying to, produce content and get attention. I'm going to start my pathway doing that. I realized early on that my pathway was kind of shitty, and I was like, I want a better pathway up this mountain. That's when I went and hopped into branding instead of talking about content creation. The point is, the niche is like, well, you're the character on the journey. And are you interesting? Are you charismatic? Do you have quirks and like interesting things that make you a human being, make you likable? Like, why do your friends hang out with you? There's something about you that they like. You're a character in their universe. You're a virtual character in a virtual universe for people you don't know, right? So back to the niche thing, I think where you can go wrong is if you try to be for everyone, quote unquote, right? So I see this all the time. I sit down in a workshop and I've sat down with billionaires, millionaires, startups, and I hear this all the time. I ask them, who's your target audience? And they say, well, Dane, our target audience is everyone. Well, that's interesting. Explain how that works. Well, we do this and we do that. I'm like, cool, is it working? No. Well, I wonder why. Because if you try to speak to everyone, we're speaking to no one. Like, put 100 people in a room, try to get them to agree. Not happening. It's like herding cats. So for me, I guess to put a full stop on this is like, you have to be a unique character. You have to be you, and you have to be a human being. But you have to be clear on what your route to the top of the mountain is. And you have to build themes around that, because if people discover you and they can't figure out how to describe you, they're going to forget you. Like, you need to be distinctive. And if you look at Grant Cardone, and if you look at these characters, most big brands started off niche.
Whatever you do it for less at Harbor Freight. Wherever you book, first check Kayak to compare car rental sites and prices to find a great deal on exactly what you're looking for.
How am I already underwater?
I'm in the same boat.
I'm in an actual boat.
Because I've been using Grammarly's AI for years to keep me high and dry. Try it. Grammarly can point out what's missing right there. The CEO will want to see a deadline.
Oh.
And here you should connect the projections back to company strategy.
Yeah. Mia, can you do a deep dive?
On it. 10% higher revenue by next year.
I'm sending it in.
Budget and headcount are approved.
Download Grammarly for free.
This combo meal's got combinations. Make this thing your own creation. Entree, drink, and choice of size. Oh, and it's free to swap fries. BK, have it your way.
Characters, most big brands started off niche, right? Nike, we make shoes for people who run. And Phil Knight was making shoes with a waffle iron. And it was all about running. That was it. Like, you got to remember, like, oh, Nike sells shoes to everyone. No, they don't. They started off selling to runners. They crushed that category. They built brand equity, and then they line extended. They're like, if we can crush running, can we crush tennis? Can we move laterally into basketball and do the same thing? Well, yeah, because runners want to win. Basketball players want to win. Tennis players want to win. Well, let's speak to the part of the athlete that wants to win. So then they crush the athlete market. And they're like, well, athletes don't just want to win. Everyone wants to win. Everyone's an athlete, right? So Nike speaks to the part of you that wants greatness. So if you're trying to build a brand, you have to figure out what part of your audience are you speaking to? Are you speaking to their fired up part? Because a part of me likes David Goggins yelling at me, but another part of me likes Simon Sinek calmly talking to me. So there's different parts of me, and there's different personal brand options that speak to different parts of me. So what you have to realize is you have to niche to what part of the person are you speaking to, and you have to be clear about it.
Take that a little bit deeper before we go on. So is that like a tone aspect of your brand? Meaning like maybe, and this is like certainly the case, I know for me, I've gotten business advice from a lot of people. I've been to a lot of different business events, marketing advice from a lot of people. But you said if we're going to speak to a certain part of me, I also can learn from, call it that Grant Cardone energy. But that's probably not my favorite energy. And so there's others that bring it differently, but he's got a lot of wisdom on one side. So when that was like that final nugget you just dropped, sounds to me like tone. Is that what you're saying? Or can you expand on that?
Yeah, I'll expand on that a little bit. So like, I think, like a lot of things make the whole. So there's a great book you can get on this, and the book's called No Bad Parts. And it talks about how human beings aren't essentially always one format, right? So at work, you might work in finance, you might be like rigid and task oriented and like super methodical about your day-to-day operation and what you do in your career. On the weekends, you don't give a shit about tasks, you don't have any plans, you just want to hang out, drink beer, and go to the beach and surf and figure it out as you go. So you have two different parts. You have the like radical weekend hang out with my friends part of you. You have the gonna go hang out with my parents part of you, look after my little nephew part of you, crush it at work part of you, the dating, flirting part of you. So we have parts to ourselves. And what I would say is to tone, like tone can speak to someone's part. Outfit, style. So like think about what stimulates someone. Visual stimulation, verbal stimulation, I guess emotional stimulation. And then you have figurative stimulation. So like a concept when you get an aha moment or the penny drops in your mind, like, goosebumps. Like these things need to be distinctive. And if you're inconsistent with those distinctive triggers or mechanisms, you look like a crazy person. You're unclear. You're unsafe. It's like when you hang out with your friends and they're constantly flipping personalities, constantly talking about things that are irrelevant and confusing. You just don't want to hang out with them. I think a lot of people on social media just scramble and it's unclear. They're undefined. They're undistinctive. And I think they do that because they're just trying to find out what the algorithm wants. If they just focus on studying the greats and identifying what works for them and their style, Grant Cardone figured out what works for him. You figured out what works for you. And you don't have to be like Hormozi. You don't have to be like Gary Vee. And I think this is why Gary's like, you are your niche. He's like, just be you. But like, you still also have to get clear on what that is and whether it works or not. I'll give you one last example. So like, if I'm on a sales call, people call me the smiling assassin. So on a sales call, I have to in many cases talk to corporations. I oftentimes I'm in a boardroom and there's like 16 people. The company's worth $400 million. And I'm trying to tell them why I'm the guy that should solve their branding problems, right? Like, what does this guy know about, his hat and his pair of bands? How can he help our corporation? You know what I mean? So I have to use a tone that's like, guys, I'm here to help. I'm here to support you. I'm here to get to the resolution. But we need to talk about the numbers. So like I'm smiling, but I'm hitting them with a tone that's like slightly serious, but I'm taking the edge off by smiling and using friendly, calming, approachable body language. There's like layers to this. So like, and then again, if I'm hanging out with my kids, I'm not doing that. I'm not smiling at my kids and like telling them what to do around the house, but you have to figure out what are the mechanisms that you as a character has to put together to get the audience reaction or to get the sales mechanisms or engagement that you want. But back to the smiling assassin thing is I have to use tone because I have to take the edge off, but I have to be like, we're seriously solving a problem here, but I'm not going to be a dick about it. So we're going to have fun and we're going to enjoy the process.
So much wisdom there and a lot of insights to unpack for our own personal brands. And just to clarify, is this book called No Bad Parts, Healing Trauma and Restoring Wholeness with the Internal Family Systems Model?
Exactly right. And you might say, well, what the hell has that got to do with branding? So that book, I think what it is like, I don't know if you study like Carl Jung or like psychology or NLP or anything of that nature, but all human beings have trauma, every single one of us. And that trauma shows up in our personality traits and how we show up in day-to-day life. And again, it's like when you are like, I want to start making content, but I'm scared. And then you start thinking about people are going to judge me. I'm going to get bullied. I'm going to get ridiculed. They're going to laugh at me. And like, that's trauma coming up from your childhood, from your parents or what have you. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just like we've had terrible experiences in life. And later on in life, when you want to become a content creator, that trauma tends to show up. And when I do workshops or in-person events, everyone's talking about branding and content. And under the hood, they're actually coming to terms with their trauma. And I think that's a great book for anyone who's looking at building a personal brand to understand, hey, what part of you wants to make content? But what part of you is holding you back? And how do you get those two to hang out?
Here we are. 2025, we're going deep on this branding conversation, and we'll of course link this stuff up in the show notes. This is the number one bestseller in NLP psychotherapy, over 3,880 reviews. Looks like a legendary book and powerful tie-in to how we could all grow in this area. Okay, we're actually going to get into the brand fundamentals. I mean, I actually kind of want to get a definition of branding. Think about some of the next steps that we can do in regards to making a 90-day push to updating our brand. I do want to encourage people to check out Dane's book, which we will also link up in the show notes, the 90-day brand plan. And we'll talk about that later. But before we get there, one last kind of question in the introduction, and as far as my notes go, so we're really still just getting started, you're great at creating content, especially Instagram. You used to really be, that sort of, like you mentioned, you were the content guy. Now you're the brand guy. But you focus heavily on creating shareable content that triggers emotional responses. Do you have a framework, or how do you try to do this consistently? And obviously, listening to this podcast, we can extrapolate that to be thinking maybe more about, man, is this content shareable? How can we trigger emotions? Give us a few tips here.
Yeah, great question. Like, again, like I think when it comes to content creation, it's all emotional. If you go through TikTok, if you go through YouTube, if you go through X, if you go through Instagram, just look at the reshares and look at the comment section of the most viral content that shows up on your feed. Like right now, I don't know if you've seen what's going on in New Jersey with all of the lights in the sky and everyone's freaking out about it. So like, that tends to be, whether we look at media or news, or whether we look at politics, or whether we look at content creation, it always comes back to emotionally led content. The news and politics are great at this. They sensationalize things that may be mundane or normal. They make the everyday thing seem like an exceptionally negative thing that you need to be focusing on. So when you're making content, if you inject a bit of sensationalism around the emotion behind what it is you're talking about, it makes it all that more attractive to share with others. So we tend to share things that emotionally grip us. If we see a phenomenal movie, you have to see this movie. If we go, Kendrick's just dropped a new album, it's fire. you have to send it to your friends because you're emotionally reacted to it. So we tend to share what makes us emotional with those that we want to share our emotions with. So if you look at content, it's no different. Like content essentially is just the social landscape of people sharing their emotions with each other, full stop. You could be like, I'm sharing wisdom and knowledge. Nope. At the end of the day, we do everything pretty much led through our emotions. The framework I use for this is there's kind of 7 key emotions that tend to get the most viral traction when you share content. And those 7 things are...
Hey, we're about to get back into the podcast in just a second, but I have a question for you. Do you want to grow your personal brand this year? Do you need more leads and sales in your business? If the answer is yes, then right now is the best time to go all in on YouTube. Today's podcast is brought to you by thinkmasterclass.com, where you can get on-demand access to a 1-hour deep dive training revealing how to start and grow a profitable YouTube channel this year. For a limited time, you can get access to this on-demand class entirely for free, where you will learn the 3 biggest mistakes that people make when starting a YouTube channel, the new rules and changes that have been happening on YouTube and how you can use them to create an unfair advantage, and the exact strategy we use at Think Media to generate over 350,000 organic views every single day. The data is clear. 70% of viewers claim that YouTube makes them more aware of new brands. So don't wait any longer to start growing your brand and business with YouTube. Just go to thinkmasterclass.com to get access to this no-fluff, highly tactical, free on-demand training. That's thinkmasterclass.com.
Essentially, number 1, and which gets out of the way, is like sex. You know, things that are provocative, things that are promiscuous or sexy, tend to get attention, tend to get shared.
I've seen comments like, it would be so much easier if there was an app that I could just stream into my TV.
The mobile app is the whole point of having this. It's supposed to be on the go. You're supposed to be able to download the videos to your phone.
The app pays for itself, essentially.
I thought these people that have been, with me really deserve an upgraded experience.
Now with Uscreen, I'm wanting to use the app more because of how good it looks and how easy it flows. Notifications happening on all the time because women are providing feedback, asking questions, engaging on the community. It's exciting every time I get to open up my app.
When we launched Let It's Close where Uscreen, right away, it exceeded my expectations.
Reimagine exceptional with the Buick Envision. Buick, exceptional by design.
Get 0.9% APR, plus no monthly payments for 90 days on Buick Envision.
Not particular for myself, but hey, it exists, it's out there. Number 2 is like really thinking about things that are like hilarious or humorous or funny or they just make you laugh. Like Mr. Beast is just funny. Like I like watching his content. I think David Goggins personally is funny. It just makes me feel good. I just like, damn, this guy's just humorous. Even though he's being deadpan serious, I kind of get a kick out of it, right? Super shareable. Next is like things that are inflammatory. So things that like, might trigger an argument. We can think of certain characters in the world right now that when they say or share an opinion, there's 2 camps. There's the camp that's for them and the camp that's against them. Doesn't matter. That debate is interesting. Again, a lot of emotion there. People like to argue. People like to debate. But most people aren't into the inflammatory piece. Next is things that are like strange or weird or odd. Like when you watch a piece of content, you're like, what the hell is going on here? Like you see Mr. Beast doing something like he's like, we're going to surround this Lamborghini with stuff that this guy spent $10,000 on at Walmart to try to protect the Lamborghini. If he wins, he gets to keep the Lamborghini. Like, what? Like, this is strange. Like, what the hell you want to watch? Then we go into things that are like prolific. So they give you goosebumps. It's like Simon Sinek talking about, Start With Why in his TED Talk. It's just like deep, it's immersive, it's like interesting, it's intimate. And then lastly, it's like looking at things that are aspirational, like feats of strength, like Red Bull doing stunts. It's like,